Euro 2016 was the first Euro Championship to have 24 teams participating in it. Due to that fact, we got the chance to witness several nations competing that you wouldn't normally see in international tournaments. Iceland, Wales, Albania, Northern Ireland and Slovakia made their debuts, while on the other hand, even with an expansion, former winners like the Netherlands and Denmark still failed to qualify. It was a remarkable tournament that united all of Europe and felt as big as the World Cup. I mean, even the moths wanted to be a part of it. In this video, we'll take a trip down memory lane and revisit the iconic summer of the underdogs. And by the end of it, I'm pretty sure you'll be convinced that the 2016 edition was the best Euro Championship of all time. But before we start, if this isn't the first time watching the channel, please consider subscribing. We're so close to 2,000 subs and I'm sure we'll get there by the end of the year. Now without further ado, let's get right to it. For starters, I gotta be honest with you, there weren't that many crazy matchups in the group stage. It's understandable considering that you now had 24 teams from the same continent competing for the same prize, so you were bound to have fixtures that looked unbalanced or plain boring at first sight. But it's like the old saying goes, never judge a book by its cover. The opening match, France vs Romania, looked like an easy win for France, but it was an evenly balanced affair that only got resolved in the dying minutes with a banger from outside the box, courtesy of Dimitri Payet. In their next bout, France would have an even easier opponent, the modest Albania. But once again, it took left-blood 90 minutes to put the Albanians down with 2 stoppage time goals. Then in Group P, similarly to France, England were gifted an easy group. But this one provided us neutral fans even more madness than the latter, inside the pitch and outside of it as well. I know this sounds like a joke, but what do you think it happens when an English and a Russian enter a bar? Total f***ing madness. Both groups of fans got blackout drunk and fought against each other like they were in the Middle Ages. There are no winners when it comes to violence, and ironically, there were also no winners in their matchup as well. Although a late stoppage time goal by the Russians was seen as a massive defeat by the English media. So as you can expect, there was immense pressure on English players to beat Wales in their next match, which, despite the odds, most of us were actually counting on Wales to win. After all, Bale had guided his country to a solid win over Slovakia, and we all know how passionate and patriotic every Great Britain country can be. In the end, England managed to perform a comeback and won the match with a late Sturridge goal, a moment that originated this iconic scene. Group D and Group E provided us arguably the best matchups on paper. Croatia vs Spain was the headline of the first one, and it certainly lived up to the expectations. But Czech Republic vs Croatia was arguably even better, with the Czechs plotting a comeback in the last 15 minutes of the match. While Group E, considered by most a group of death, had multiple upsets. The Italians beat the Belgians' golden generation, but then got humbled by the Republic of Ireland. Trust me, it was useless to find any logic in the results from this group. While Group C, well, let's just skip this news fast, because the real fun of the group stage, despite all the f***ing draws, came from Group F. Ronaldo's Portugal were faced with Austria, Iceland and Hungary. By far the easiest group on paper, considering that Austria had only qualified once, and only because they co-hosted the 2008 tournament. Hungary's last participation had been in 1972, while Iceland had never even participated in any international tournament. So after 3 draws out of 4 matches in the first 2 rounds, one of the greatest final match days commenced. Portugal vs Hungary and Iceland vs Austria. Every team could still qualify, and all of them were at risk of getting eliminated. So in typical Portuguese fashion, a seleção were only able to squeeze out a draw in a back and forth match that could have easily ended with a historic Hungarian win if it wasn't for the brilliance of Cristiano Ronaldo. Iceland on the other hand made history with a late Rostassen goal that sent them to the knockout rounds ahead of Portugal, but not without obliterating their commentators' vocal cords. After the dust had settled, it was time to witness the first ever round of 16 in Euro Championship history. Once again, all the critics complained, this time, that the tournament brackets were extremely unbalanced and that this tournament gave us almost no interesting matchups for the first knockout round. Little did they know what they were about to witness. Switzerland pushed Poland against the ropes, but the penalty kick lottery was more favorable to the Polish. Croatia lost against Portugal in heartbreaking fashion in a game where the difference makers came from the bench. Italy marked the end of whatever was left of the Spanish golden generation, but the one match that is still talked to this day as perhaps the biggest football humiliation of all time is Iceland vs England. Look, we all knew England weren't gonna win the Euros. There was no way they could do it after having played like garbage for the last 10 years. We knew that they were bound to be humbled by any decent squad, but come on, Iceland. They were lucky to even make it out of the group stage. But after 18 minutes, the Nordic nation had already mounted a comeback, and throughout the match, pretty much every neutral fan tuned in to support them. After an unlikely Premier League win by Leicester, we felt that we were about to witness history again in such a short period of time. It was evident when you gaze at the English international faces, they had completely lost it. And when the ref blew the whistle for the last time, I vividly remember that my first reaction was to start laughing. Sorry English fans, but that's what you get when in every single tournament you act like you're better than every other country. Now from this point on until the final, the match quality was kinda average in my opinion, but there were still plenty of iconic and everlasting moments. Ronaldo inspiring his teammate João Moutinho with the most iconic motivational speech since Mel Gibson in Braveheart, with lines like "Anda bater, tu bates bem" and "Perdemos que se for", going down in history in the Portuguese lore. Iceland's dream run ending at the ends of the French, with Payet and Griezmann solidifying themselves as the best players in this tournament, Belgium bottling their lead against Wales and Hobson Kanu becoming the man of the moment, scoring one of the best goals in the tournament after outwitting 3 defenders with a Cruyff turn, and who could forget Italy versus Germany. This encounter that lasted 120 minutes plus penalties spiked both nations' art attack ratios to an all-time high. Plus, Zaza went from star to meme in the space of a few minutes. With only 3 matches left to play and with many giants out of the equation, the semi-finals weren't a great spectacle. Both matches went the way most people expected them to, and after 30 days filled with memes, underdogs rising and falling, and even nations competing for who were the biggest trunks, we were finally at the end game. Portugal versus France. And man, the plot behind this match is the stuff of movies. Well, for starters, this was Ronaldo's chance to correct history 12 years after Portugal's lost final. Furthermore, it was a matchup that pitted working classes against each other. There were thousands of Portuguese people living in France, but they were mostly seen as lower class individuals who usually worked the jobs that the French didn't want to. And to make it worse, the plot thickened when hours before their final encounter, the French were already parading a bus calling themselves champions of Europe. It was a battle of David versus Goliath, where the odds were heavily in favor of the hosts. All eyes were on Ronaldo. Could he carry his country to glory? Could he achieve what Eusebio and Figo couldn't? Sadly, after only 9 minutes, Ronaldo was already injured. It didn't go down without a fight though. They spread his knee, they massaged it, but it was all useless. By the middle of the first half, Ronaldo had to be subbed off, with tears in his eyes in complete disbelief. 12 years had passed, but his fate was the same. He wouldn't be able to help his nation conquer their first piece of international silverware. Or so we thought. Against all the odds, Portugal withstood France's pressure, with luck playing a role in their 0-0 draw after 90 minutes. When extra time rolled around, France were tired after having spent 90 minutes with a pedal to the metal, always pressuring Portugal. And to quote David Goggins, by this point, the Portuguese grit had took the French national team's soul, and the match became way more balanced. And then, out of nowhere, the unlikeliest of heroes, Eder, the ugly duckling that every Portuguese fan mocked, made an entire nation go crazy. Portugal were so close to making history, but they needed to hold their lead. And guess who came to inspire them? Cristiano himself. No matter how many years I live, I'll never forget the image of CR7 limping on the sidelines, commanding his tired teammates and making sure the squad didn't bottle their biggest chance at immortality. Eventually, after the longest 13 minutes in Portuguese history, the whistle was blown. A seleção had just completed one of the biggest upsets in Euro Championship history. Of course, you can argue that Fernando Santos' football was atrocious and that his squad played boring and safe football. But hey, so did Greece in 2004, and if you can beat them, you might as well join them. Portugal might have not been the most attractive of champions, but their victory is still a massive achievement and the ultimate underdog story in a tournament full of them. Countries like Wales and Iceland had once-in-a-lifetime performances, while individuals like Payet, Joe Allen and Rui Patricio were also way above their normal level. Football really felt like an utopia during 2016, and those Euros were the perfect way to close out an epic football season. For better or for worse, Euro 2016 will go down as the embodiment of European football culture. David Guetta on the beat, drunk people fighting each other, and lots of drama. But what do you think? Is this the best Euro Championship of all time? Let me know in the comments, and if it isn't, make sure you tell me which Euros were your favorites. Leave a like so that YouTube knows you want to watch more content like this, and subscribe so you never miss the most interesting football discussions, stories, and top 10 lists. Thank you for watching until the end. Sorry for the sick voice. I appreciate you, and I will see you soon.